Hello, everyone, from whichever time zone you're joining us from. This is Usha Nesamani, and welcome to the inaugural season of the Second Act podcast. Now, on to our guest today. He's a well known surgeon and chairman of Lifeline Hospitals, which is a multi speciality hospital with locations in Chennai, Hyderabad, and the Middle East. Welcome, Dr.J.S.Rajkumar.
Nice to get that intro, Usha. I barely recognized myself.
I think we all know you. You are a very humble man as well. First, I would love to start off by asking you, why politics after still being in a successful career in medicine?
So there are two types of doctors. One type is very introverted, can only function within himself, like a nerd. And the other type wants to talk to many people, wants to relate to many people. And I belong to the latter type. As a doctor, Usha, you can make a difference to 20, 30, 50, or 100 patients every day. But with a single stroke of a pen or with a signature, a health minister, a health secretary, or a doctor who's in the health ministry can make a difference to millions of people. And as one grows older, one looks at ways of impacting a larger segment of the population at a given point of time. Like as doctors, we tell people to about toilet hygiene or why they should be careful. And at one stroke, the Prime Minister of India built 11 plus crore. Well, that's 110 million toilets, the largest toilet program ever in the history of the planet. And a lot of diseases came down, diseases which like snake bite, which people were having when they went to the fields, diseases like infections that women had when they went to the fields at one fell stroke. So, long story short, more impact, shorter while, and that's why I've chosen politics.
That's awesome. I was just wondering, have you explored other aspects of medicine that have a larger impact as well? Because there are, people run, chains of hospitals, or they have, they're in some sort of a global health platform where they impact, millions of people. So I was just wondering, have you explored other aspects? And so why specifically politics?
Right. So I have dabbled with two other areas. I am interested in artificial intelligence and health because I believe AI can make a big difference. We did one of the world's largest health camps by checking 11,500 people over 2.5 hours using a face reading for the vitals. Also, my other interest is in anti aging and functional physiological medicine, in which we're just about making a foray. Having said that, however, the maximum impact, the maximum bang for the buck is only, and I repeat, only in politics. And I firmly believe that good doctors should be at the helm of healthcare, health and family welfare politics, and we can make a very big difference. I did a quick run through several great doctors like Dr. Harshvardhan, Dr. Hande, the list is endless, have made significant sweeping changes because they understand patients and they understand doctors. And that's where I'm intending to be.
That's awesome. I mean, so you're really talking about the care of an individual that you've been doing to the care of many.
Society.
Yeah, so that's what you want to do. So, sort of, let's explore this topic of sort of success and impact, because I mean, that seems to be what's driving you. How did you define success in your earlier years, and how are you now defining success for yourself going forward? Maybe you could just sort of think about sort of yourself, and as you're talking about this, think about the youth that may be listening to this podcast. What is it that how did you define success in your teens and your 20s and your 30s, and now, in your 60s, how are you thinking about it going forward?
Usha, that's a brilliant question because I believe a man can count his evolution and track his own personal evolution by his personal definition of his umbra or the central core of success. Yeah, sure. And in the 20s, my My success meant simply getting as many degrees, reskilling, upskilling, rapidly getting new skills, new techniques. It is all technical. In the 30s and 40s, it became a little, well, not 40s, 30s certainly. You look at success as the size of your home. I'm unashamed to accept it in public, size of a home or the type of car, etc. And then in the 40s to 50s, you realize that it's all, excuse my language, bull, and it doesn't really count. So I've been actually downsizing my personal space after 45, 50. Yes, we try to expand our business space because that professional growth and running with larger businesses, supporting many, many more families is very integral to the concept of expanding business. But my personal idea of success, I brought it down. Which I'll tell you one thing that has sat well on me, that I've really looked up to, is I believe you are successful if you do what you like, if it's in alignment, and I repeat, if it's in alignment with your personal goals, and if there is no infringement of your essential values. Tough call to get all three of these. And when Einstein was sitting in a patent office as a clerk, he was in the depths. Of course, he was thinking of relativity and whatnot. But I think if you can align these three, what you want to do, what you're good at doing, and what fits in with your values, then that's success. And yes, sometimes for somebody it comes with 1 million, for somebody else it comes with 100 million. I believe those numbers are just numbers. It's good to have them, but that's not the ultimate goal, and that's in my life.
Delve deeper into this because I think you're defining success in different ways through your lifespan. And then you're also talking about goals to achieve that success.
Yes.
And you're also talking about value systems that sort of relate to how you go about with the goals. Okay?
Yes.
So you've given us some idea of the success. Let's talk about the goals. So yes, in your 20s, I know that you personally got 34 or 35 gold medals, and you have more MRCS or FRCS than what's normally done, and so forth. So those were sort of your goals. Are you seeing your goals? How are you seeing your goals on something amorphous as impacting many? How would you evaluate your success?
Good point. First of all, I think goals do change. Goalposts do change because, as George Santana said, the only thing that's permanent is change. And to think that something that you thought at 20 would be immutably present at 60 is kind of pushing the envelope. So, yes, you're right. Goals do change, and it's more reflective of our evolution. You know, I wouldn't, bat an eyelid at some branded shoe or branded car or whatever now, whereas I might have just been impressed by a Lamborghini or Ferrari and by somebody driving one in my earlier days. So that's one. Second is in terms of personal kind of willing to move forward, having that will and willing oneself to move forward. It can't be driven by just superficial goals. It's got to be driven by a larger altruistic spread, which Usha comes and sits beautifully on our shoulders in our profession. I'll tell you why. And there's an element, Hippocrates, 200 BC, from the island of Kos, wrote about this, and he called it apotheosis, or the doctor thinking he has changed or upward into a god, theosis. Because if you have 50 people or 100 people telling you every day, oh, thank you, you did this for me, and one of two, three things. At a very superficial level, your head can become large. But at a greater level, one becomes humble that you just did your work and still people look at you with so much affection and gratitude. And that, in my mind, I always tell people, we just stitch, it's God who heals. It makes you believe in a higher force, and it makes you grateful to that higher force. So that, I think, is a really fulfilling thing, and that's independent of money in the bank or your EMIs being paid. It's complete by itself. Then the other thing I want to say is I'm very Indian. And in India, we believe in the process of Sat Chit Ananda. Sat is truthfully, Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is bliss. true blissful consciousness exists in every individual. And the man who's confused thinks that success gives happiness. The man who's truly evolved knows that happiness is success. It's not success that's happiness, but true happiness is success. And to enjoy the world every moment and to understand that inside us is that permanent. I know it sounds like a something that people may be thinking I filched it from some guru's book, but I believe in this. The Upanishads that I believe in, it's my system, my value system. The Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Vedas, they all say, "Are, you're happy inside." And 2,500 years ago, the Buddha said this. Whatever you do, whether you're a doctor or engineer, there were no engineers those days, but whatever you do, whichever profession you're in. Yes, you're right. There were builders, but the Buddha said the commonest mistake that the average human being makes is to believe in some way that having wealth will give him happiness. Happiness, he said, is truly internal. And Usha, as I'm growing older, I'm realizing that happiness has been inside me. Yes, there are business issues, there are tensions, there are bank issues, patient issues. They're all superficial. Deep down, if you can hold that core, and it's my advice to young surgeons and doctors everywhere, whatever the pressure, if you can hold that core and say, I refuse to not be aware of my happiness, then everything else will fall in place. And that's what all the schools of Hinduism and meditation and everything else want you to be. They simply want you to recognize that you're happy inside.
I was just thinking about this, and you walked right into this thought that I had, which is that there's an ability that you have around mindset. That's what you're talking about. And what you're basically saying is that even when you were earning medals and all that, those were goals, and sure enough, when you were young, those were important to achieve. But being in a profession such as medicine has allowed you to stay true to sort of just the patient and the care and the sort of the spiritual bigger picture of and so it's not as much the goal, it's more about the care and the individual. So that profession itself has allowed you to have that mindset, but you've also evolved where you're saying the mindset, whether that's because of adoption of, or studying of scriptures, or your passion for Hinduism, or just your interest in philosophies, has made you sort of really think about the mindset as an important element of your second act for impacting people. It's not as much the goals that did I serve 1 million people, or that would be great, but for you at the end of the day, it's this mindset that you want to have. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's what I was sort of getting the sense that there's the mindset that is really important to you. Um, you've mentioned the Upanishads. Are there certain philosophies that have stayed at the center of your core, even when you were young? So again, I'm talking now to the youth and to even people going into their second act who may be confused. What are some philosophies, or what are some sort of books or podcasts or things that you gravitate to? And I saw you just had a book about compounding, joy of compounding, but I'm just curious.
So from my earlier days, I've been kind of very highly influenced by a book called The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, with a beautiful foreword written by the Dalai Lama. The other book that I was really heavily impressed by and influenced by is the Kathopanishad, which is our Upanishad that deals with death. And the one long poem that I think every Hindu should read, every human being should read, is Adi Shankara's Bhaja Govindam. And Adi Shankara tells every man that he should constantly tell himself, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, Punarapi Janani Jatari Sayanam. He says, you're continuously in a flux. You're either being born, or you're dying, or you're past death and waiting to get into a lady's womb. You're just in this circle. And he says, Ida samsare bahadustare, kripaya pare, pari murare. This never-ending samsara cycle. This, of course, I must tell the listeners here in this podcast that the Indic religions, Jainism, Sikhism, Hinduism, uh, Buddhism, and of course, all the kind of substrata in Hinduism subscribe to reincarnation. But the Abrahamic religions, like Islam and like Christianity, believe you live only once. Everything else is random. So if you believe in that, I believe as a Hindu in reincarnation, and I believe that this is one short trip. I've made 1,000 trips before, and I'm going to do 1,000 trips later. When you think that, Usha, what happens is you believe that whatever you get is like a pattern that you pass on and go. Whatever wealth that you have, like J.R.D. Tata, influenced by Vivekananda, said famously, I am but the guardian of my wealth. You're holding on to it for some time and then boom, you're gone. So I think as a Hindu, I often meditate on death. And then you understand as a doctor, you're saying that it's all a short trip. One cell inside decides to start doubling and the party's over. And the realization that life is short will make you yearn to make every moment count completely. And there's a beautiful book that I read called Tuesdays with Maury. It's a fabulous book. I think it's the neo-Americans closest to the Tibetan book of living and dying is Tuesdays with Maury. So I think, well, somebody asked the great Marcus Aurelius, great Roman emperor, how can I become more noble? And he just answered, memento mori. Think of death. You will automatically, you won't go and fight with your neighbor if you knew you were going to die in an hour's time. So I think that is, death is all around us in the medical field. You don't know which patient will crash when. And I think if you just sit and think a little bit and then apply your basic Hindu philosophies, you have an overall three-dimensional, 360-degree view of life. And in that, there is not much space for a big ego or having a nose up. I feel it's ridiculous when people do that. Rajnikant, famous actor, superstar, he said, Ellam siridu neram dhan nanba. It's all a short trip. Be aware of that.
Wonderfully said. I think your mindset is will be clear to the listeners. Just the way you're talking. I was wondering, on a more tangible note, what are some of the skills that you have learned in medicine or over the years that you can actually leverage in your second act of politics? I mean, I can think of one. I think care of people, right? The other one I can think of is, you're an extrovert and you're very front facing. So I think you've got that. And you're also somebody who likes to teach, so or mentor. So I can see that. So I was just wondering, what are some of the skills? Because when one thinks of politics, one thinks of policies, one thinks of interacting with many varied people. One thinks to some extent also of not the cleanest profession sometimes. So I was just wondering if you could, as much as you can without,
Can I ask you, Usha, if everyone keeps saying politics is dirty, then only the dirty people will gravitate towards it. I do believe that a few people should enter and say, look, I'm Mr. Clean. Let me try to make a difference in politics. Perhaps we won't succeed. Almost certainly we won't. But down the line, 1 or 2 generations later, someone will succeed. And we are just sowing that seed. That's number one. Number two, if you look at Indian politics and Indian politicians, the one thing that people don't do with Indian politicians is they don't trust them. There's just zero trust because they know once they're going to be speaking from one side, the next day they're going to be speaking from the opposite side. So I believe you can bring in trust. As a doctor, what you do is you bring in trust to every interaction. So I have a definition of trust. When somebody's actions consistently mirror or echo their words, then trust is born. Like I tell you, I'll come by at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. and I make it there. Maybe 7:50, maybe 7:30, maybe I dawdle in, but I make it there. Then I've said something, I've done it, and trust is formed. I tell a patient, I'll come back and see you after surgery, and I drag myself there. Trust is formed. That trust is missing in politics. I believe if good professionals who believe in matching their words with actions can bring that element of trust into Indian politics, we can go up a very big way. I might be completely wrong. One of my favorite books is a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. And the last line would be, after teaching us 450 or 200 pages, Richard Bach will write, just remember, everything I taught you in this book may be wrong. So I might well follow my face. But what the hell, it's worth a shot, it's worth a try. And at least I'm starting off with a noble intention. Right now,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, from what we can read in the US, it seems like, Prime Minister Modi is doing a great job.
Right.
And some of the stuff you've talked about, like the toilet schemes, and, I mean, he's doing quite a bit to uplift the masses. And I just listened to, a podcast with him, and there was a lot around mindset. Which I was quite amazed. Mindset, Hinduism, discipline, just even his fasts and so forth. So there was a lot going into politics to make a politician that wasn't what you would normally think is
Exactly.
politics, right? And so let me ask you this question. Are there elements of your personal life that play into your success? And you can make it broad. It could be your interests, it could be your philosophies or your reading. What is it that grounds you? Because I think you talked about trust. One of the things that's always hard for people with second act is, they're wanting to make a change. So they need that sort of personal support infrastructure, if you will. It's hard to make these changes if you're, if everything is changing. So I was just wondering, what is it that, of course, your profession is still at the core, but I was just wondering, what are the other elements of your life that help you sort of enter into the second act?
I think one of the strongest points that I have is my time management, which I just copied from Mr. Narendra Modi's template. So I do the same for 5 hours, maybe every day. Yes, you'll land up with a few black circles, and people ask me whether I've applied coal. But the important thing is that you can sustain at 5 hours and 7 days a week. So that gives me time to read the Constitution of India, to read about the body polity of the Indian administration and its architectural framework, to read and learn multiple languages, to relate to our brethren across the states of India. It also gives me time to do some workout in yoga or meditation in order to stay fit, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Absolutely. Absolutely right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So it's a combination of all these. And I think, right, you said at the core is my profession, where we relate to people. We are dealing with people all the time, people's problems. But 50 or 100, here it's 50,000 or 100,000. So I think if you're not a people man, you shouldn't come into the active electoral arena. You should sit back and, go back to the drawing board and make plans. I tend to be a little bit of both, but I'm essentially a people man, and I like to be out there meeting, facing, and interacting with people.
Yeah. What you're also saying, which I think is important for people to note, is that you do have to take care of yourself as you're entering into something like this. And whether that's, reading for you or fitness, those are sort of important elements that you need to hold on to while you're doing, the bridge. One aspect that you mentioned Dr. Hande. I think when you enter into any new realm, you need mentors. You need people that are your supporters. You need people who are your angels, who. So I was just wondering, how are you looking at that? Because you obviously are a mentor to many different people, and you have 400 employees. You've got a rich life as is. And how do you now go to a second act in a different arena? And I know you've been dabbling with this for a while, so it's not, it takes a while, sort of the run, if you will. But how are you looking at your support and I don't mean family. I mean, mentors who will, help you, boost you, give you advice, all of those things.
So in the Mahabharata, and there's a thing called the Yaksha Parva, where the Yaksha, this surreal voice comes out. You know, a bodiless voice asks Yudhishthira, Dharma, a lot of questions. And Ved Vyas is telling us various things. And one of the questions, many, is what should you give up in order to learn? And the answer from Dharma is in order to learn, you need to give up your pride. And I think when you enter, as you rightly said, when you enter a new field, I might be well known medically, but in politics, I'm still relatively an infant. I'm a novice. And therefore, you need to give up your pride completely. You need to go to bigger mentors and say, yeah, you please teach me. I don't know. You connect me. If I go and say, well, I'm a big doctor, I can do this surgery, that has now no bearing at all there. And I think I'm very fortunate to have a 99-year-old Dr. Han David, every one of his mental faculties as sharp as a razor, as it was when he was 50 or 40. So he's a very, very big for me, he's a big, big, big prop for as a support system. I'm looking at one or two other larger than life characters in Delhi who would also be my supporters in the BJP, but I've not yet finalized it. But you are absolutely right. Without a mentor, without a godfather, without a guide to show you the way, it's all dark. Indeed, the word guru, the Sanskrit word guru, gu means darkness. Ru means dispeller of. So your guru is actually shining a light on your books and teaching. And so even in politics, you need a political guru to shine the torchlight and illuminate the way ahead.
Right, right. I wish you good luck with that. I hope you get that because I think that is important. Sort of attaching on to that, just sort of, you're hoping your mentors will give you this. What do you see your challenges are going into the second act?
So my challenges are that I'm starting afresh and I'm starting, I won't say at the bottom, but fairly close to the bottom of the political ladder, bottom rung. This is a fairly savage dog eat dog, raptor eat raptor kind of predatory landscape. And people won't hesitate to slip a knife between your ribs, irrespective of what you have contributed to society. So the first 2, 3 years when I came in, I thought, well, everyone knows I'm a good guy, and they should give me a hand and pull me up. It wasn't really happening. And then I realized that just because you're a vegan doesn't stop a lion from eating you up if you're stuck with it. So I realized that I'm exactly on par with everyone else in this. The whatever epaulets that I wear from my previous act, they don't count in the second act in terms of structure, in terms of functionality, Usha. Perhaps I could speak and engage a crowd far better than the other novices in politics. So that's functionally. But structurally, you start at the bottom rung and you've got to work your way up. It's a very treacherous way full of mines, some minefield out there. And I'm gingerly navigating my way through this fairly infernal landscape. Let's see where we get. But I keep telling myself it's all an experience. And if you don't earn accolades, you'll at least learn. If you don't earn, you'll learn. Yeah. So I'm constantly getting that feedback and trying to get some more. It's like snakes and ladders. You move up, you come down. You move up, you come down. Yeah. But what the hell? It's about the trip, isn't it? Yeah, it's a beautiful Hindi kawat that says, manzil hai, khoobsurat hai. Manzil hi khoobsurat hai. I'm so sorry. The safar hai khoobsurat, manzil se bhi. Safar is a journey. The journey is prettier, more beautiful than the destination. So I don't know where I'm going to get, but on the way I'm meeting so many people, we're helping people, we're doing service, we're getting their blessings, and I'm moving on.
Well, isn't that what sort of, a lot of books talk about, whether that's flow or, any of that, which is that basically it's not as much the goal. It's what you said earlier, like what is your purpose? What are the skill sets you have? and how creative are you in figuring out the structures or the support mechanisms, and you're leveraging the experience that you had
Spot on.
to kind of keep going one day at a time, and the destination is not as much as an issue, as a thing, as
The journey
getting
itself.
there, right? Well, and that is sort of different from the second. I remember for me, all the grades were really important, and I have two kids at Stanford, and both of them, I keep saying, don't worry about the grades. It doesn't matter. It's what you do at Stanford that matters, not your grades. But I think it's again, talk about to the youth in here, which and then we'll talk about people actually having a second act. But the society has framed us to think of everything in terms of goals, right? It's not, the journey is just, oh, I have to do this to get there, but I have to do it. And I guess wisdom gives you that. And so, in a way, your second act of going into politics is almost for you to emphasize that aspect, correct? And I mean, would you say that? Or
Spot on. You've said it right. I think your first act is very societally bound. I want to be somebody. Your second act is very personally bound. You are the one who's actually driving your second act because you want to do it. First act, you have to do it. Here, you want to do it. And I think that's the second act overall will tend to be more enjoyable in terms of personal experience compared to the first.
because you're choosing it very thoughtfully and knowledgeably, as opposed to societal or your family or peer pressure or whatever else that you
Other
think of
factors
it.
like that.
Well, this is great. And I think you mentioned it. Can you tell us one or two things you do to recharge yourself?
Right. So reading recharges me. I have a terrific app called the Blink List, which shortens books, non-fiction books, and I'm able to often go through 8 or 10 of them during travel or when I'm watching a movie or whatever, and that gives me a huge store of information. So yes, information makes me feel good. Second, actionable advice. If I can take that, bring that into one of the talks that I'm delivering in a school or a college, or if I can implement it in my daily profession, something that I learned, I really enjoy that process.
Thank you so much. And for all our listeners, we will be back with another guest next week. And this person is going to be my 89-year-old mom who has lived in many different countries and is actually on her second act because she's decided to do a PhD at 89. And so I want to hear from her. Hopefully, she'll finish her PhD, but we will be talking to her hopefully next week. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you again real soon.